I said at the top of the program that we're going to play a little guess the program. I did a trade of some things for some things with a guy. And one of the items that I got, it brought up a kind of concept of card that they used to have back in the territory days, as well as a point that can be made about today, which we'll get to in the end. But I thought I would turn the tables on you. And honestly, this is not going to be hard for you. But as I said, it's going to bring up an interesting discussion.
Okay, I'm going to go with Florida.
Oh,
19. Can I guess now, or how does it work?
It's going to be more difficult than that. You have to actually hear the first name or two, or the first match, or whatever. And it ain't Florida. So there you go.
I'm a genius. I just ruled out one of the 50 states.
Well, now I've narrowed things down. God damn it. It'll be even easier now. Only 49 more to go. But basically, for the people who might not listen to the drive-thru, and what in the hell's the matter with you? Guess the program is where Brian usually finds a program in his collection, his memorabilia, and it gives me the lineup, and I try to guess the date and the place, right? And by date, we mean year. And but every once in a while, wild card bitches, we flip it around. But we're just going to do this one here. But are you ready to take note? Because now, Brian, there are 8 matches. So you might have to jot this down.
Okay, that's telling.
What's it telling you?
Well, let me hear the first match.
All righty. And I can't actually give you the full championship that this match is for, or it would be, it'd just be foolish for me to say that, but is for the state championship of the state that this card is being held. Norvell Austin versus Dick Dunn. The second match for the Southeastern Junior Heavyweight Championship, Lee Thatcher.
Lee Thatcher.
That's the way it's written here, but I have a feeling it's Les Thatcher. Les Thatcher versus Kubla Khan. Third match for the Women's Mid-South Tag Team Championship, Paula Kay and Donna Cristanello versus Susan Green and Peggy Patterson. The fourth match for another regional championship that would be too specific, the Medic versus Mike Boyette.
Okay.
For the United States Tag Team Championship, the Infernos with their manager J.C. Dykes versus Rocket and Flash Monroe. For the Women's World Championship, the Fabulous Moolah versus Tony Rose. For the World's Junior Heavyweight Championship, Danny Hodge versus Jackie Fargo. And finally, for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, Jack Briscoe versus Ken Lucas.
Okay. I'm writing down the card. I usually don't do this, but you said 8 matches.
It's a lot to digest.
It's a lot to digest. My first thoughts are it's either Alabama, Upper Florida, Pensacola, Florida.
I won't dilly-dally you around any longer. It is indeed Alabama. Do you know a town in Alabama?
I don't think this is Birmingham. Mobile, Alabama. No, it's not.
You are correct.
I am correct. Oh, look at that.
Yes, that's why I was laughing. You are correct. Mobile, Alabama. What's the date?
Okay, hold on now. So Briscoe's the champion. Hodge is the junior champion. Moolah, well, you know what? That doesn't help anyone. Lee Thatcher.
Well, that's why I'm saying I think it's Les Thatcher.
I want to believe it's Lee Thatcher against Kubla Khan here. I'm going to go with It's either 73 or 74. I'm going to go with 73.
You are correct. November 6, 1973, Mobile, Alabama, Lee Fields presents the Night of Champions. And what they did was they went to the big building, the auditorium, and this is the point I was going to make about all this. I knew you were going to get that because it was fairly easy. And by the way, the state title was the Alabama state title, and the other regional title was the Gulf Coast Championship.
No credit. I knew you were going to get it because it's easy. Thanks a lot, buddy boy.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, it didn't test your ability. It wasn't easy for the regular, fucking Tom's Dick is Harry out there somewhere. But for an expert like you, this was not a stretch. I think you'll agree with me on that.
Right. And again, for me, just to let people understand how I got to where I got to, Briscoe being world champion caps it at a couple of years there, 73 to 75. And then you try to figure out who would be where were the interns and Ken Ramey. And I ended up with 73.
Well, it was the Infernos and J.C. Dykes.
Excuse me, Infernos and J.C. Dykes. And I didn't think this would be a Nick Goulas town, so it had to be somewhere else.
Yeah, I had too many people on the card for Nick to pay. But no, the reason I brought this up is 8 championship matches. And there's 2 points to be made out of this. One is championship matches, when championships meant something, were an attraction. But now, and somebody's out there going to say, well, Cornette, geez, they had 8 titles. You say all the modern companies have too many championships and then nobody can keep track and blah, blah, blah. This was a thing that, especially in the early 70s, was done as a special attraction card of its own. This was not even once a year. This was maybe once ever. They probably didn't do another one in Mobile. Nick Goulas used to do it to death, where, he would just find world 6-man belts when nobody has a 6-man title. He'd find shit in his closet and just pull it out and make a Night of Champions. But Nick overdid everything. But the Night of Champions principle in those days, especially in many of the Southern promotions that could work together, was if you got a date on the world heavyweight champion, then make it a big deal. Call Moolah. Of course, she'll come and work for you and defend her title. And it wasn't as much to pay her as it was to pay probably Danny Hodge to come in. And the Southern Territories, Georgia could work with Florida, and the Carolinas could send somebody, or McGurk, or whoever was in the Gulf Coast, or Memphis, or whatever. So these were not championships that were on TV, not only not regularly, but almost never. You never saw the NWA World Champion on your local TV or the World Junior Heavyweight Champion, except if you were in the McGurk territory. That's where Hodge was based, or in Florida where Briscoe was based. Otherwise, you saw interviews and occasional film footage, but it was a rare thing. And then you would have, for example, I think the Southeastern Junior Heavyweight title here. Well, this predates when Ron Fuller bought Kazana in Knoxville and established Southeastern Wrestling. I think it's an old belt that they had laying around. And where was Les Thatcher? Probably, if he wasn't in the Gulf Coast, he might have been in the Carolinas, where, they...
Oh, well, actually, no, 73. Remember, in 73, he was probably working out of Georgia.
Okay, so from Georgia to Mobile, and the people in Mobile don't know that the Southeastern Junior Heavyweight title is fictitious, because they tell them, yes, this guy that's defending this championship all around the Southeast is coming in. And it adds to the thing, and they already know the Alabama state title and the Gulf Coast title. And the tag title, the U.S. tag title, that was their local title. So when you put all that together, now people say, oh, golly, instead of seeing the tag champions and one of our 2 singles champions, we're going to see 8 title matches. And that's wow. And so that would draw. And you would, that's a concept that go ahead.
Did they raise the ticket prices like they did in Memphis?
It doesn't have the ticket prices on, probably not in Mobile. But it doesn't have them on here. But Eddie Graham would do that a lot, would be championship prices in effect if he had multiple titles at stake on a card. But that's the point that I'm making, is that this was something that was rare and special and treated as an attraction in and of itself, the fact that there were going to be that many championships defended. Now they try to do it these days. 4 titles will be defended. And you see that on TV for free every week. And with Tony, he's got so many of these regional and other company and associated belts, you can't keep track. And with the WWE, they've got women's title on SmackDown and Raw and men's title on SmackDown and Raw, even though it's reigns as universal. You know, they've had so many belts split up that it damaged it. There's an Intercontinental, there's a U.S. title, blah, blah, blah. And you see it all the time. So that negates what made the Night of Champions a special promotional gimmick in the territory days, because you never got to see that. And there was the Super Bowl of wrestling they did in Cleveland Stadium in 73 or 72? The 3-ring deal where they had everybody come in. And they lost their ass on that one, but that's what I took. The 2 biggest attendances that we had in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, who filled a Knoxville Coliseum up both times. One time was with a card based around titles being defended from every major promotion, and the other one was built around the legends. And those were special because we never did it before or since, and if we'd have done it again, volume 2 the next year, it might have done well, but not as good as the first one. But the championships used to be used in such a way that they could be a draw until it was overly repetitive and prostituted out, and now it's just confusing.
Yeah, if you were a promoter in a small territory, like let's say Alabama, and you got a date on the NWA World Champion, which is one of the main reasons a lot of people wanted to be in the NWA, just to get a date with the NWA Champion, would you see the value in trying to build up a show around who you already have working for you and having the NWA Champion, or bringing in all these outside people, or not all these outside people, like Moolah and various people coming in with different championships to do that? Because you do have to pay the NWA their cut. So it's not like pure profit based on the NWA Champion coming. There is money that has to be sent back to the NWA too.
Well, but the answer to your question is, would I do one or the other? They did both. Because yes, Jack Briscoe, that was probably his first time in Mobile as the new world champion. That's probably why they had the idea to do the Night of Champions.
Yeah. November 73, that probably is his first time there.
Right? But then if he came back toward the end of 74, early part of 75, they wouldn't do that again because they'd done it. Then they would have a couple of hot program matches from their own local territory that were ready to go underneath the main event. They'd have a challenger ready. That Ken Lucas was big in that territory as a babyface, but it might be somebody else next time. But they would still try to get a date on the NWA champion, but they wouldn't do the Night of Champions thing because they just did it. That would devalue it. They'd try to have another hot program or something else going on, or some other theme, or in the title match itself, is it a rematch from a year and a half ago? But this time, the special referee is going to be Cowboy Bob Kelly, goddammit, or whoever's big in that part of the, so they would have a different twist. So you would do both. You wouldn't just beat that to death, or then it wouldn't mean anything, like 18 belts don't mean anything now.
Is Ken Lucas the biggest Southern wrestling star that nobody talks about?
Well, at least of that era, possibly. Yeah. He was never a big singles draw in Memphis, and a lot of people have studied Memphis. He was in tag teams, and also his probably longest and most successful run in Tennessee was before any of the video still exists, late 60s, early 70s. But he was a great worker for the Southern style and for the people. He could fight, and it was believable, and he had fire to him in the ring. Ricky Morton, he didn't train Ricky Morton per se. Ricky was already in the business, but Ricky always credited Ken Lucas, who by that time was in his easily mid-40s, as teaching him a lot about how to sell and how to work and timing and fire on comebacks and things like that. Even though Ricky looked totally different than Ken and different styles, but it was the same concept they were applying. He was big in Alabama, big in East Tennessee at one point. Did a lot of work for Nick Goulas at that end of the Tennessee territory. So yeah, but there's not a lot of video, unfortunately. But anyway, that's the thing with that is the Night of Champions thing, and also the idea of there were different territories and different circuits, so you could have established stars that you could still bring in from 250 miles down the road to augment your card for a big spectacular like that. And that's the way the territories could work together. Oh, and you mentioned the NWA cut. Here's the thing about this. Honestly, by that point, I don't believe there was an NWA cut in the World Junior Heavyweight title. If there was, it was purely to get Danny Hodge, because within a couple years, that and Hodge's accident and having to retire, it wouldn't mean that much anymore. And Moolah, you paid her for her and her girls, but there's 6 girls from Moolah on there. You're paying them the same thing as the guys, probably less than big name guys would have charged to come in. And a couple of other, Jackie Fargo from Memphis, because he was a name all over the South that could come in and lose to Danny Hodge, but you weren't beating a local guy that you were depending on regularly at that time. So this was not that much more expensive than a regular card they might be presenting besides the world title match, which theoretically should pay for itself. The bigger expense came on gambling and going to the big building in town. And Nick would do that sometimes. He'd go to the Municipal Auditorium in Nashville instead of the fairgrounds when he had, something hot going on, because you could put 3,000 or 4,000 more people in that building. And that would be sometimes the bigger expense that you would go to if a promotion wanted to, go to a big building for a bigger show. But that usually was when the office in that town was only running a smaller building regularly anyway. And there was possibly a need to upgrade. If they were in a fairly good sized building, they'd just try to, maybe do championship prices and add $1 or $2 to the overall ticket price. Anyway, but you passed the test, Brian. You won Guess the Program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Would you like me to sing some more to you?
No, come on, no. Let's play more Guess the Program.